My name is Hattie. I am 24 and I am a wellness athlete within bodybuilding. And I have so far done one competitive season, and that was in 2022. And I'm currently dieting, but still technically my off season and looking to compete again next year, so at the end of 2025. And I've probably been doing, I'd say, properly bodybuilding since the end of 2021. So it's still fairly new. That's kind of like my little life at the moment, is pretty much a full-time gym bodybuilder kind of gal. To be honest, it was completely out of the blue. It was never planned. I was never really into the gym. I was never a sports person. It was around COVID time. So obviously that started in 2022. And I don't know if you've heard of it, but I moved to a little island called the Isle of Man. Not many people know of it. So you've got England, like you've got the UK, and you've got Ireland, and then there's a tiny little island in the middle, very, very, very small, called the Isle of Man. And my granddad lives there, and I visited a lot. And start 2020, so yeah, start of lockdown, I moved over there, and I just wanted to lose a little bit of weight, really, just tone up, as it were, get a little bit more healthy, learn a little bit more, and signed up to an online coach and did my first diet phase with him and was kind of gently pushed into the direction of bodybuilding and competing. So it was never on the agenda. It kind of just happened.
Interesting. So, what was the push behind moving there? Was it just COVID in general?
It was a few things. I mean, I actually had a rental property with my ex-boyfriend, and we split up. So I needed somewhere new to live, and my current job at the time I didn't particularly love. And I just had a bit of a quarter life crisis. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I just packed up and moved and went to live with my granddad for a little bit and basically started a whole new little life. But I'm
Interesting.
I'm back in the UK now, so it was literally 2 years.
Are you a personal trainer, online fitness coach, or gym owner on the verge of burnout? Are you wanting to grow your fitness business but can't add more hours to your hectic schedule? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. Like, what was the availability and kind of like accessibility of stuff there? I mean, you said it was very small, so was there like stuff to like gyms and all that kind of stuff, or what was it?
I mean, there are some stuff, but you're very limited. And I mean, I don't know what it's like in like the US and Canada, for example, but in the UK, a lot of places are open 24/7, but they just don't have the amenity to do it over there. So your likes of your gym closes at 9 o'clock on a weekday and then 4 o'clock on a weekend. Even shops in general, probably like 9, 10 o'clock. I think there was one petrol station that was open 24/7 on the whole island. So yeah, I mean, the gyms there were kind of like leisure center vibes. They're not your typical bodybuilder, proper, what I would perceive as proper gyms.
Whenever you got in back to the UK, what was kind of the cultural shift and cultural differences that you saw, from just being in you know, beginning your journey somewhere that maybe is smaller to then going somewhere that has more access, more people, more community.
Yeah, it was completely different. I mean, because I hadn't done it prior to living on the island, I was used to living in the UK and where I was, because I pretty much moved back to the same place, maybe like half hour down the road. But in terms of the whole industry was completely different. It was like going straight into a completely different community. And like you say, the opportunities and the availability to get to different gyms and just being able to meet new people and go to different events, it was a massive change. So it made it a lot easier being able to move back, because I was just able to be in a position to go to all these different things, which was really, really good to kind of push me further within the industry as well.
So you had about what, two-ish years or a year and a half, 2 years to kind of get your body where you wanted it and then step on stage.
I mean, not particularly, because I only really started the gym in probably the start of 2021.
Mm.
And even then, I was aiming to diet. So I wasn't ever in this kind of bulking phase and trying to build muscle. And because I never had it planned that I wanted to step on stage, I didn't really prep anything for that. It wasn't the best setup, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, I guess in terms of like actual prep time, probably only like 6 months. And
Gotcha.
then I decided to obviously start my prep, and even that itself from my start of prep, which I think was about September 21, and I stepped on stage March 22 and finished the season in May. So it was roughly about 8, 9 months of prep, as
Mm.
it were.
So what was the motivator? What was kind of the engine behind wanting to actually compete and step on stage?
I think initially it was just to prove a point to myself. Because in my head I'd always been at school, I'd been like the bigger girl. I'd never been really petite or very feminine in that sense. And I'd never stuck to a diet properly. So in my mind, I was a bit like, well, if I need to get on stage at the end of this, then that will be kind of something that keeps me going towards it and actually sticking towards my diet. So I didn't really think much about the whole bodybuilding lifestyle or anything like that. It was just a bit of fun. And because I knew nothing about it, I was so naive. I think it made it a little bit easier because I didn't quite know what I was getting myself involved in. So I think everything was just kind of new and exciting, that it just helped me a little bit.
So that new and exciting time, how long did it last until it became like, oh man, like I'm actually in this. This is a real thing and now I have to like, you know, I have to prep and I have to like really just in general like watch what I'm eating and even restrict and then, the gym sessions are getting more intense and now it's like even though it still might be exciting, the newness is in some senses like has worn off. Like the initial motivation has worn off. How did you respond to that kind of wearing off and then still needing to do the work?
I mean, I think for me, because I was living over there technically on my own, I mean, I'd met a few people, made some friends, but I was very much in my own little bubble. And given that the island was so small, you're quite contained anyway. And then because I didn't know anyone, I was able to be very selfish. So I didn't have a lot of external issues going on in terms of like, oh, I need to catch up with this person, or I've got this event to go to. There was literally nothing else. My life was get up, tick the boxes, go to the gym, prep my food, do what I need to do. And it was almost just living this robotic lifestyle, which, because I had no experience in it, it was still very much like, oh, this is quite fun. And then towards the end, when it was getting a little bit harder, that's when you'd start noticing, for me, I'd notice changes daily in terms of my physique, or my weight would drop. And then that would then push me a little bit further to be like, okay, no, let's carry on. It was definitely hard, but being on my own, I think really helped me personally at the time, because I didn't have to worry about anyone or anything.
So how did you start to see yourself, if you did start to see yourself change from you mentioned the physical, but the mental perspective as well, ticking the boxes and putting the work in and being consistent and seeing results? Like, how did you start to see stuff around you in your life change because of, the changes that you were making?
I think I didn't really notice anything different until I came back to the UK. So because I was living with my granddad on and off, and I was in and out of different jobs and bit part-time, bit full-time, it wasn't until I came back home and I was almost put back into what was my old normal life, and it was like that was just reality again, and trying to fit into that, it was adjusting and getting used to being like, okay, I'm back with friends and family, and now I'm kind of living a normal life but trying to bodybuild alongside of it. So that's when I was like learning a lot more as to what I wanted to do as well, and what needed to be done, and how I could balance the both. Definitely a lot harder
Mhm.
than when I was on the island, but I think I enjoyed it a lot more, because it just was like mentally it was another challenge to kind of like balance stuff out.
Naturally, was there like a fight a little bit against like the old ways and old routines that you're coming back to versus kind of these new things that you've built up and like the community that you are coming back to that kind of knew you as a different person maybe a little bit? Was that somewhat challenging to kind of like continue to, be that, not even in just the fitness aspect, but in just like the mentality aspect of what you had become, or what, you had created,
Mm.
versus the person that they, had known you before you left. Are you a personal trainer who wants to scale and grow your business online? Have you been coaching online for years, yet don't know how to incorporate online into your current business model? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today.
Yeah, I think it was very, very hard because it was almost as if you've just left this time period that everything is the same. And then whilst I've gone off, or even if people say go traveling things, they're experiencing new things, they're trying different cultures, and they themselves are changing. And then they come back and it's as if nothing's ever changed. Everybody for that 2 year period, everybody's just been doing the same thing, the same job, the same routine. And I've just been off living my little life. So to come back, it was everyone's the same, but we're still different. And I think because my personality had kind of changed as well, and my values and what I wanted to pursue, a lot of people didn't quite understand that. And I did actually lose quite a few friends because we just lives didn't align anymore, and they didn't understand, and they couldn't kind of get their head around it. So it was almost as if I was then trying to fit into this new circle, which I have now got, and I am in a completely different kind of situation as to what I was when I left. So obviously, family wise is all still the same, but a lot of my friendship groups are very, very different now, purely because they are totally different. Like I wasn't, as cheesy as it is, I'm not the same person as I am now as when I left. So to try and fit back into that was really, really difficult. And obviously it didn't really go to plan. So a lot more new friends now.
I want to talk about that kind of initial bodybuilding experience and getting on stage. What was that like for you?
I mean, definitely as a first timer, I was bricking it. I was so nervous. And I think the more real it got was when I had to move back. I came back 2 days prior to my show, just to make sure that obviously I was back in the UK, and I stayed there for a few days. And when I came back, it was almost as if reality had hit, like, okay, this is happening, like I'm getting on stage, and I still didn't know what to expect. I'd never been to a show in person. I'd only ever watched a few online. So in some ways, I literally just didn't really know anything. I was very like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to do. But it was really, really exciting. And I think I knew prior to it, I was like, this is going to be the test as to whether I do or don't want to do this. And I think a lot of first timers, they'll do it without realizing and think they'll either come out one side and think, okay, yeah, I love it, or vice versa. I've tried it, it's not really for me, but at least I've done it. And I think I'm glad that after I came off stage, I was like, yeah, this is for me. Like it was so much fun. As much as I was nervous, I just loved the whole experience. And it was just a bit like the icing on the cake. Like I'd gone through the whole process, and it's almost like you get to show it off at the end, and you can just show in one day these months of hard work. So it was a bit like not a relief, but it's hard to explain like in one word, but it was just a nice feeling of I've worked hard for this and I am going to show it off. And it was just nice. And I had friends and family there. So it was a really, really supportive day. And obviously, all the other competitors, it was just a big group that everyone was in the same boat. And there's a lot of support for each other.
You mentioned the word relief, and I think that that's such an interesting one. What were some of the biggest takeaways that you had from the whole experience? And, was it something that you were like, okay, I know I'm going to be doing this for a while, or was it like, okay, I know I like this, and we're going to maybe do another show and see what that holds? Or like, what was that initial kind of perspective on that show? And then looking forward, that did you have like a strict plan after that, or was it just like, let's take it as it comes?
So I had a few other shows lined up anyway. I think I'd initially booked two more after my first one. So I had three planned, and I ended up adding in an extra one in between my first and my second. Um, but I'd never thought about it long term. So where I am now in terms of, right, I want to go far in this sport and I want to be competitive. I want to eventually one day turn pro and compete in the pro ranks. Like I never had that thought of stepping off stage. I thought this is fun. I'll definitely want to finish my season and have a load of fun. I think I want to do it again in another year or however long, but I never really took it seriously. Again, I was really naive. I was like, yeah, it's a bit of a thought, but I didn't really like at the time put that thought into action. It was just a thought. Um, but I definitely realized that I did enjoy it and it was something that I was wanting to do again. I just didn't know to what extent at the time.
Did you feel like the stage was somewhere that you really loved to be, or did you feel like it was just this kind of like ending part of all this work, and then that was just kind of the natural almost place to be, but it wasn't like you fell in love with the stage per se?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really, as much as I kind of, my work is online and social media and documenting things, I am behind a screen. Like, I'm not in front of people, and I'm not the type of person to love attention in real life. Like, I just gives me anxiety, and I'm just not a very showy person. So to be on stage and literally have a whole audience of people just watching you, and also in heels. I don't like wearing heels. So it was very much like I like the training aspect and it is just the icing on the cake. I would definitely, regardless of competitive bodybuilding, I would still live my life the way that I do now with training, eating, building my body and my physique. And it is at the minute it's a chance to show off the hard work that I do behind closed doors, kind of. So even though I document the process, it is still something that I would do regardless of social media. This is like my life and how I enjoy it. So it's a chance for me to show to others the progress that I've made. It's not like I don't feel like I necessarily belong up there, but obviously it's been a good few years since I've been on stage. So it'll be really interesting to see what I feel like come next year,
Mhm.
but it's definitely not kind of like, oh my God, I love being on stage because I don't often like all eyes on me.
That's funny. It's I think not that uncommon though. I mean, I think if you asked bodybuilders, there would be a fairly large percentage of people who have that same sentiment of I just love the process, I love the lifestyle. After those 4 shows in that first season, correct?
How many did I do? I think, oh wait, no, five. I added in two extra ones, so I did five in the end.
So, how did you take the learning? You get into it, you learn a little bit about it, you kind of get your body ready, you do the shows, and doing 5 shows, and then you go and then you have that reverse, and then the extended off season. So how did you shift your mindset? How did you kind of go from like, I have this constant goal in mind of next show, next show, next show, to then like, okay, I don't have a show in mind, or we're going to be building, or we're going to be working, and now I need to kind of shift my mindset a little bit. How did it take you a while to kind of learn how to do that and like focus on something that's so far away?
Yeah, I really, really struggled with it post show. Like my mind was a mess. Um, and to go from the constant goal to, okay, there's a goal, but it's not till like at least a year away, maybe longer. I never envisioned it being 3 years when I came off stage. Like that wasn't the plan. But I had a bit of an issue with kind of like my previous coach where I was almost just left to my own devices and I was very secluded. I didn't really talk much and I really struggled majorly with the food aspect. So I coming off stage was great. It was a high. Like I finished the season really, really good. Probably like a month post all my shows was really fine. And then I just kind of hit this wall and I just blocked off completely. And I was living back in the UK full time at this point. Um, and I wasn't working. I was looking after a family member. So there was just other things that became more important than bodybuilding. And it was as if I'd just completely forgotten about that whole thing and it just was like, okay, maybe it's not for me. And my reverse was horrific. It was so bad. I think I must have put on like 10 kilo in 2 weeks. It was not the best. So initially shifting from prep to being sensible and going into growing phase was just not handled very well. And it's probably taken me a good year and a half to get into a better position than where I am now. Um, so yeah, I think people underestimate the post-show rebound phase quite a lot.
Yeah.
Everyone handles it differently. I just didn't handle it very well at all.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
There was kind of a plan in place as to what I needed to do. I just couldn't stick to it. And I borderline had issues with eating disorder. I've never had anything diagnosed, but it got to a point that, in a nutshell, it was basically along the lines of binge eating. I hoard, I did hoard a lot of food. So anything that I couldn't eat in prep, I was like, well, I'll buy it. And it kind of mentally made me feel okay because I'm like, well, I can't eat it, but it can be in the house in the cupboard and I'll feel fine. And then come the end of show, I'm like, well, I can eat it because I'm not getting on stage. And I had this abundance of food and chocolate and just shitty foods. And I just ate all of it. And it was almost a sense of like this overwhelming, I can't control myself. It was if my body was just going for everything and I couldn't stop it. It was very, very strange, but it was almost like it was very much out of control because I just didn't stop eating. Like I didn't have the relationship with my coach to be able to say, look, I need help, like I'm really struggling. What do I do? Like, how can I help myself? But yeah, it was literally just eating for the sake of eating, couldn't stop. And then obviously in that cycle of binge restrict and yeah, not great.
And how long did it take for you to kind of get back on track?
So I had my coach with me post show for probably about a month before I was like, okay, well, I'm not sticking to anything. I'm literally paying you to just ignore everything. So I'll just kind of do my own thing and just have a complete break. So I was probably on my own for about a month, 2 months. And then I met my current coach, who was a friend of a friend who also does coaching. So I was introduced to her so I finished my competing in May. And then I met her in the August and signed up within the week. And it took us from then to probably, I want to say last year, to actually get in a relatively good spot. So we're looking at near on 2 years to fix my food relationship, be able to diet without feeling restricted, and just kind of cope with things as a normal person, regardless of bodybuilding. Like I just did not have a normal mentality in life. So it was literally strip it back to basics, learn how to control different things, register hunger cues again, understand what I should and shouldn't be eating, and kind of get on track again before we even look to sort out my physique or anything like that. It was very much like focus on my mind and my mentality towards stuff. So I'd say, yeah, probably near on 2 years to kind of get back in a good space.
So, what were some of the biggest things you learned during that time period?
Main one for me is probably like people say quite often the stage is always there. For me, I kind of have the mindset of, well, food is always there. So there's a difference between enjoying and just eating till you're comfortably full, or being involved in a event, whether it's, it's a birthday or a meal out with friends and family or whatever it might be. I don't feel the need to kind of overeat and overindulge. Previously, it was a case of, well, I need to eat it all now because tomorrow I'm back on track and I'm not going to be able to have that food anymore.
Mm.
And like switching from I have to have it to I can have a little bit, feel satisfied, and then I'll just carry on again tomorrow and just kind of not create a massive kind of separation between having to have it and then also just having like a little treat. So it's like food will always be there. I don't have to have everything now. Even when I'm dieting, it's like, well, there's still going to be a point that I get to enjoy myself. And even through the diets that I've done so far, because it's not a prep, I've still gone out and enjoyed myself and, been to events, not restricted, not felt out of control. So it's just reminding myself that just because you're in that moment, you don't need to kind of make the most of it, as it were.
I think it's confusing and tricky sometimes for the brain to know that lesson. And then also you mentioned like having and wanting and like the difference there and like what the difference really is. And sometimes I think you go from like you want something, you want that treat to you have to have it, mentally you have to have it.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. Like I said, it's taken me a good few years, and I know a lot of other people have had that same issue. A lot of the time, from what I've heard with speaking to bodybuilders, a lot of the issue is surrounding food. You don't often hear, you do sometimes, but not often in terms of like their attitude towards training. A lot of the time it is with food and understanding the hunger cues and dealing with cravings or listening to your body with, like you say, between wanting it and having to have it and just eating for the sake of it. And it is a hard kind of cycle to get out of.
In some ways, it kind of reminds me of like the mind muscle connection, right? Like when you're training, like you're in tune with your body a little bit. But on the foods aspect of that, like, do you have that like almost mind, food, stomach connection?
Think you kind of just become disassociated with it. As you said, it's like you eat in a bulking phase, you just eat because you have to. And then when you flip it to dieting, it's like it's just another aspect to reach to your goals. You kind of just have to put aside, as hard as it is, any emotional thought towards eating. It's like you're not eating for enjoyment, you're eating for a purpose. And it's not a quote unquote normal person, any person on in the everyday, you stick to your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you might have a few snacks or whatever, but you never have a consistent normal routine with food. You're either not thinking about it and having to eat because you have to, or just have to put up with the fact that you're constantly hungry. There's no balance to it at all.
Yeah. I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, it's like you're either not thinking about food or and you're eating a ton of it, or you're probably thinking a lot about food but not getting a lot of it. I've never thought
Yeah.
about it like that.
Yeah, there's hardly any balance. I mean, some people obviously handle it better than others, but I think the best way is to disassociate any emotional feelings towards it. It's just it's another tick box. It's like, okay, well, I need to go to the gym to build muscle to do this, so I need to eat this sort of food to get to this physique. It's just another part of it, really.
What do you see in the future, and maybe even kind of connecting that a little bit to the present? Like what are you doing now to prepare for that future?
Immediately, I'd say not a lot. My kind of process with life is, as much as I have goals and aspirations, I'm very much a live in the now, enjoy the now, don't focus too much, because if I think too far ahead, it tends to stress me out. And I just want to enjoy now. And if I think too much, I forget where I'm at. And I'm like, I'm really comfortable with how life is, both in and outside of bodybuilding. So as much as I'm kind of prepping now, so like I'm in a diet phase, to reverse properly and obviously kind of have another attempt at handling the food situation coming out of a reverse, and then looking to prep into 2025. So I mean, my ultimate goals short term would be to turn pro, and that's not in the immediate future. I don't plan on turning pro next competitive season. I want to be top amateur ranks. I want to be competitive as an amateur and in some ways make a name for myself before I kind of get put straight back down to the bottom ranks of a pro. But yeah, goal wise, I definitely want to turn pro, and that's what I will be aiming for. And I feel like I have all the right people and support network around me to be able to do it in the best way possible, make the best progress, be as safe and healthy as possible, because bodybuilding is not a healthy sport. So yeah, I mean, I don't think like say 5, 10 years in advance. I just focus on enjoying what I'm doing now. And I love the sport, so I enjoy it. I feel like as well, if I put something in place, if I don't reach that, then I'll annoy myself. But also I had a close friend of mine as well, and they were like, well, why are you putting a number on things? If you say I want to get to X position in 5 years, what if you could physically do it in 2 years? Why give yourself five when you're actually just lengthening the process? So that's why I don't kind of want to put a time frame on anything. It will happen when it's meant to happen, and I'm going to work just as hard each day, each month, each year for whatever goal it might be, rather than give myself all this time and think, well, okay, it's fine because I've got another 3 years, when actually I could probably achieve it a lot sooner, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Things will happen when they're kind of meant to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's journey is different, so you can't compare one person to the next because the whole process of doing everything is completely different.
Appreciate you coming on. It was great to just kind of learn a little bit about your journey. And if you want to share any socials or anything like that before we head out, you can.
Yes, so my main one that I use is Instagram. So it's H_EJ Fitness. And I also have like a side modeling page as well, which is Hattie modeling _. And at the minute, YouTube is probably the best place in terms of documenting like most of my bodybuilding sides with training and just general stuff, which is just my name. So Hattie James.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.